Welcome back. Today we are joined by Sami Wong, a speech and language pathologist who helps clients navigate communication challenges like aphasia. We dive into what aphasia actually is and Sami's personal experiences with the disorder. Sami touches upon the role of music in the therapeutic intervention for people with aphasia. We also chat about Sami's creative side hustle on Etsy. What started out as a revision resource for herself has now actually become something that brings her passive income. So let's spend some time together expanding our knowledge and understanding how we can get a little more bang for our buck when we're asleep. Over to you, Sami. Sami, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. So many different things, but for quite a while, I did want to be a singer, which I think is very fitting for this podcast.
Yeah. Did you have lessons and things or?
I never took lessons until my senior year of undergraduate in college. I had a couple extra credits and I went to New York University, which is a big art school. So I decided to take some private voice lessons, which was probably, one of the highlights of my time there and also helped me realize, wow, this takes a lot more skill than I thought it would. And it was so fun. And I realized quite quickly that that wasn't the career for me.
When did you realize the career for you was in the speech and language therapy side of things?
Yeah, oh gosh. I wish I had realized a little bit earlier, but not until I was 22, about to be 23, I guess. So I had already graduated. I had a degree in marketing and advertising, and I just wasn't really enjoying it. I think I wanted a career to kind of give back a little bit more. And my dad had actually had a stroke when I was in high school, when I was 14, and he ended up passing away in 2016. And so many people who he had done therapy with came to his memorial service and got up and spoke, which can be a big challenge for someone with communication difficulties. And it was just so impactful and so moving. I just felt this, call to stay with the community, and that's when I decided to go back to school and pursue this career.
I don't really remember hearing the word aphasia until reports of Bruce Willis's health came out in the media. And you mentioned your father and the stroke that he experienced. Is that when you first heard it too? And what was the experience there for him?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That was the first time we heard the word aphasia, was in my dad's hospital room after he had the stroke. Doctors were coming in and kind of explaining some of the symptoms that he had had, why he was having a hard time answering us and understanding us and communicating with us. I think for a lot of people, we learn about strokes and brain injuries and have kind of a general sense of, someone gets hurt and then they're on this path to recovery. But I wish that more people knew the word aphasia before kind of going through an experience like this.
You also mentioned before we came on that actually there are different types of aphasia. So could you take us through those so we understand them a bit more deeply?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't get down into kind of the nitty gritty of all the different types of aphasia, but I think generally some important things to know is that there's aphasia from a brain injury or, a brain tumor that impacts the language center of the brain. And typically you have this incident or injury to your brain, and then you're working on a bit of a recovery path, trying to build new pathways in your brain for that language to be transmitted. And then there's also primary progressive aphasia, which is maybe what you heard in the news with Bruce Willis or Wendy Williams. And that is more of a progressive diagnosis. So for that, we're working more on strategies to kind of compensate for the language difficulties and maintain language as it's kind of declining over a period of time.
When somebody does experience aphasia or a brain injury that has led to aphasia, what could we expect to be going on in the brain?
Yeah, so I think generally, what happens is there's either a blockage of blood flow to the brain or a brain bleed. And when that happens, those brain cells can essentially die. And so we're working a lot with these neuroplasticity principles so that someone can kind of rebuild different pathways with the brain cells that are living and that are active. And those are the ones that we're exercising.
We find the word neuroplasticity comes up in vocal books, particularly when we're talking about learning and motor skills. How would you best describe neuroplasticity from like a real layman's term?
The way I often explain neuroplasticity to our clients is that our brain is kind of this plastic moldable thing, and it's growing and changing all the time. And so it's kind of like a muscle, right? That we can exercise and that we can strengthen if we're doing creative activities or routine activities over and over and over again. It takes time to rebuild those pathways, and it takes a lot of practice for those neurons to kind of understand the routine that we're building.
We know as singing teachers that if somebody experiences a vocal injury, whether that is a cyst, a polyp, a hemorrhage, anything like that, it can be really scary for that voice professional. Are they going to be able to sing the way they sang before? Is it going to happen again? You know, how much is this going to impact their income? And it's really hugely part of the identity. So for somebody who is losing the ability to communicate in the way that they did before, and I love what you say on your website, correct me if I'm wrong, it's along the lines of it's a loss of language, not a loss of intellect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can imagine that can be incredibly frustrating for somebody to know what they want to say and have the ideas, but not be able to get that out of themselves.
Yeah, I think so, and I certainly saw it a lot with my dad. I think giving time can be so helpful, right? Imagine we have that kind of, oh, the words on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't quite say it. But if you have that all the time, and in different conversations when you go to get your coffee or you're on the phone with a doctor, it can be really challenging. It can be really impactful, especially when other people don't quite know what's going on, right? Even if you tell them that you have aphasia, they don't know what the word is, they don't really know what that means. I think oftentimes we have this incorrect assumption that when someone can't speak, it's related to intelligence rather than something like aphasia.
Can you recover from aphasia?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the cause, obviously, whether it's aphasia from an injury like a stroke or it's primary progressive aphasia. That one, again, is a little bit more progressive. But for aphasia from a stroke or a traumatic brain injury or something else like that, you can certainly recover. That's a lot of what we work on with those clients who have aphasia from those kinds of injuries is regaining those spoken language and comprehension abilities, along with reading and writing, because it can also impact kind of that spoken output, written output, and then taking language in through listening or reading words on a page.
Do you notice in your clients that they're able to get back to the same level of communication that they had before aphasia once they have recovered? Or do you notice that there is like a change that just continues to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so hard because everybody's recovery journey is so different. I think oftentimes when I meet people who have aphasia and they, sound totally fine, you would never know that they have aphasia. They might still say they don't feel like they are where they were prior to their injury. I know with my dad, he did lots of different kinds of speech therapy and different intensive kind of boot camps. And his language was probably, I don't know, 60% back. But what I think is so amazing is that he developed all of these different strategies to be able to kind of still communicate and get his point across. And he was able to be really independent after his stroke. He would, go spend a weekend at the casino or drive to another state to visit friends, which was really nice for him and for us.
What are some of those compensatory activities then that somebody would be doing?
Yeah, again, it's hard because it depends on the individual, but it could be things from using gestures to kind of communicate what we want, right? I remember we were at a coffee shop in Dublin and he wanted like a specific pastry that was in the back, and that was hard for him to say, but he was able to kind of point and say, that one, and they understood him, which was awesome. And they took the time, which was really helpful. So it can be things like gestures, it could be things like talking around the word. So, if we're talking about a pet dog or something, that furry thing that you have at home, kind of describing to get to that word or get the other person to guess the word.
I bet that makes you really good at certain games like Taboo, where you're not actually allowed to say the word, but you have to describe it and use all these other really imaginative ways.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I'll describe it in that way, or if we're working on kind of drawing pictures to describe the word or situation, it's kind of like Pictionary. And I think it's a fun way for family to get involved in therapy too.
So if somebody experiences aphasia, how would that impact the way they hear music?
That's a great question. So you might already know this just because you work in the world of singing and music, but music kind of taps into a different part of your brain. We have a type of therapy called melodic intonation therapy that we sometimes do with clients who have pretty severe language difficulties, and singing can kind of help those words come out sometimes. So singing and just listening to music, I think, are really great. Not only do they kind of bring us joy oftentimes and connect us with other people, but they can also help with that language recovery.
Hey you! If you're enjoying the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are committed to bringing you engaging conversations and valuable insights from experts across the field of voice. By subscribing, it means we can continue to do that. You'll never miss an episode, and you'll be helping to spread the word to other singing teachers, vocal coaches, and overall voice nerds. So subscribe to this channel now and just watch your teaching grow. So from meeting somebody who's come to you as an SLP, what's usually the process from meeting them to signing them off and they're back out into the world?
I think it really depends on the client and what their concerns are. And then, of course, finances are a big factor too, right? Are we billing insurance? Are we having the client pay privately for the services, where you just tend to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of time and the number of sessions that you might have with them? Before all that, I always like to just spend time getting to know my clients before really diving into the assessment and then treatment piece. I think building that relationship can be so important and really influential to a client's success. And I've seen that, with my personal experiences and then my professional ones too, that kind of therapeutic relationship or alliance is crucial. And then in terms of assessment, depending on whether it's a language concern or a speech concern or voice or something else, we have different kinds of standardized assessments that we can pull, as well as more of a dynamic assessment, kind of, pulling different subtests from the assessments and kind of piecing things together depending on how the client is presenting to us. And then treatment again, really depends on the number of sessions that we have and the person's life, right? I think being able to practice at home is really great. And also, we know life can be very different, very chaotic, and we need to be realistic with our clients and set them up for success, not give them a bunch of home tasks that they're not going to be able to complete.
Singing teachers and SLPs, we are part of that support network for somebody, aren't we? What do you wish singing teachers understood more about the work that you do as a speech therapist, or other people in that network of support understood?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't had the opportunity to personally work with singing teachers enough to say what I wish they exactly knew, but I think some of the most important things that I just like to share about speech therapy, one, it's more than just speech. It's really hard to fit our whole scope of practice into our name. But we do work on language and we work on voice and cognition, swallowing, social communication, fluency, and more. So I think that's a big one. And then, of course, like seeking help early and collaborating early is so important. And then referrals and education are crucial as well. Sometimes, at least the settings I've worked in, we work or we feel like we're in a little bit of a silo. And so the more we can reach out to others and have others reach out to us, it not only, strengthens my understanding and my practice to be a little bit more holistic, but it also benefits our clients at the end of the day.
Many of us might be looking for a bit of a side hustle, a bit of something to earn ourselves a bit more passive income, let's say. And you have an Etsy shop from which I've bought stuff from there. I just showed you before we came on the four of your prints that I have in my studio on respiration, the larynx, the extrinsic muscles, the suprahyoid and infrahyoid, and also the vocal anatomy from an intrinsic point of view. And I love them. They're so colourful, they're really fun, and they are engaging when you come into the room without them being like really clinical, if you like. What made you set up an Etsy account?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for buying my prints. It's always so fun to see them hanging up in real life, outside of more than just my office. And your wall's beautiful. I actually set this up during COVID. So I was doing my graduate studies. I started in the fall of 2019. And then, the pandemic really shut everything down here in the States around like March, April of 2020. So I was at home a lot studying and looking through my textbooks, and I've always been really creative. Those posters were kind of my form of creative procrastination where I still felt like I was being productive studying, but certainly taking my time on those drawings. And I think one of my classmates said to me, these are really good. You should sell them. So I pondered on that for a while. And then I decided to just give it a try. And setting up an Etsy shop was so easy. It was so straightforward. It costs very little to kind of get it started. I think it's something like 20 cents to make a listing. And then people started buying them and liking them. And it really encouraged me to keep doing it more and really helped me with my studies too.
We've had people on the podcast who have created things like colouring books. Emma McCarthy Luddy did or has done a lovely vocal anatomy colouring book. We've spoken to people who have written books. I've seen on Etsy people who are sewing larynxes from thread, not actual human or canine larynxes. That would be grim. So why prints for you?
Yeah, for me, I was just trying to make some study materials. So these were things I was keeping on my iPad, on my computer, kind of printed out next to me. And then honestly, everything on my shop right now is a digital download, and it's really passive for me to maintain. I can go travel and I can still run my shop remotely. I don't have to worry about ordering prints and shipping them and losing things in the mail. So it ended up just being the easiest thing for me, and people have responded to it really well. Sometimes I'll get messages with people asking, where do I get this printed, or how do I get it printed? And I'm happy to help with those. It just makes it a lot more straightforward for me to run with having, a 1-year-old at home.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I bought them, I did the digital download and then I took the PDF to local printing store because I wanted them in A3 and I don't have an A3 printer at home. And yeah, they're great. Can I be really cheeky and ask what your biggest seller is?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a little surprising to me. I have this set of 6, what I call SLP essential prints, and that is by far my biggest seller. So it has kind of that sagittal neuroanatomy, it has an oral mechanical exam, it has 2 views of the larynx, it has an articulation poster, and then the vocal anatomy. And by far, that's been the biggest request. I've added a couple other, SLP essential sets, but for some reason, this really kind of covers what people need or want.
How many of you actually sold to date?
Yeah, I think I have around 2,500 sales. And so that could be, one item, or it could be a bundle with multiple items. So, to me, it's not a ton over the past 4 or 5 years, but it's been a really great kind of side hustle, passive income. It pays for my fancy coffee. It pays for like a little manicure or massage weekend, which is really nice.
Are you planning any more?
That's such a great question. When I was studying this and I was really like in the thick of all of this knowledge every day in graduate school, I think it was a lot easier for me to do these because, I had kind of everything I needed right there. Now that I'm in my day-to-day practice, I don't find myself referencing all of this quite as much, but I really would like to add more. Some of the more recent things that I've added have been requests that have come in from potential customers saying, like, I've been searching for this thing and I can't find it. Do you have anything like that? And I say, I don't, but I'd be happy to make it. And so that's always really fun to kind of crowdsource the idea in a way.
Oh, that's nice. So it's almost like a commission. I'll commission it for you. Oh no, because now I'm going to
Yeah,
be like, Sammy, I really need
please
this for my
do.
studio because it's got your stamp on it. I need it to all be the same.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I think, one of the most recent ones were the color swatches for the International Phonetic Alphabet that I
Yes.
did. And I had someone reach out and they wanted it to be with the British phonetic alphabet. So that one was fun because I kind of learned a little bit of the differences between our two alphabets and it's sustainable for me, right? Once I make that print, I list it and I get to, share it with others too.
Mm. How would you advise somebody actually goes about setting up shop on Etsy? You said it was pretty simple. It doesn't cost that much to do. Is it really just like the click of a button?
It kind of is, at least from what I remember doing it 5 years ago. You just need to have a good name, kind of an idea of the market that you want to go into, the product that you're going to sell. And then, yeah, you just plug all that information in there, set it up, and hopefully watch the money come in.
Does Etsy take a bit of that as like a commission?
They do, yeah. And those fees have increased over the year, obviously. So I've tried to keep my prices, stable and reasonable. I've done incremental increases to kind of match that so that my revenue or income stays about the same. They have a processing fee, they have a listing fee. They will do some marketing for you, which you can pay for. I think I pay $1 or $2 a day for the marketing and advertising, and I've noticed such a huge increase in my listings. So that's what I would recommend to people too. Once you get a couple good products on there, is to maybe give it a month and see if that helps you. And then you can change it anytime, which is really nice.
You said that you were studying marketing and things before. So do you find yourself marketing this or do you just let it run its course and while you're in clinic?
Yeah, so sometimes I do. I haven't in a while just because I haven't put a bunch of new products out there, but I have some new ones that are going to be coming out soon that I'm working on. And then I typically promote them through social media, typically on Instagram. I like to share a visual of it hanging up, in a pretty frame with an office background, and I tend to get some good feedback.
What's one decision that you would change if you were starting the shop now?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. For me, I would change the name of my shop. So it's speech plus language, all one word. But I think, at least here, language is so often misspelled. We make jokes about it as SLPs, switch that A and the U. And I think that makes that name a little bit tricky. And then the plus, is it a plus sign? Is it the word plus? And having to spell that out in my domain name and my shop name, I think can be a little bit tricky. So if I could go back or start it again now, make it something a little bit easier and catchier.
Okay. Sammy, you've been really generous because you have a little gift for us. Could you tell us about that?
I do, yeah. So I have a discount code for my shop for your listeners. It's going to be BAST10, BAST10 for 10% off their purchase. And they can use that anytime.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. You know I'll be on there. You know I'm going to add to my
Absolutely.
wall.
Good, yeah. And send me, some requests that you'd like me to make for you.
Oh, you'll regret that, but okay. Thank you so much, Sammy. And so, could you just remind us where our listeners can find out about you, what your shop is called on Etsy, so we can go directly there? Yeah, how we can follow your work from here on out.
Absolutely. So my domain is speechpluslanguage.com. That's speech, Plus language.com. And that's my Etsy shop name as well, Speech Plus Language. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is SAMIWONG_. So my first and last name.
Amazing. Oh, thank you, Sammy. And can I ask you, what was your father's name?
Yeah, it was Derek.
We need to dedicate this episode to Derek.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, it's been lovely to chat with you and to connect with you. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been so fun to get to chat about this work and, educate people on what aphasia is. It was kind of my dad's passion, and I feel like I get to carry on that legacy.